Miriam, you're next on my view. Oh, and you are muted. Good.
I'm Miriam Dixon from Raleigh. I bring Christ Church. I certainly have loved the online ringing. It's not, of course, tower bell ringing is like the difference between caffeinated coffee and decaffeinated coffee. They're two separate drinks. I love the online ringing for learning methods. And I love the online ringing for the socialization. I have gotten an enormous amount of learning from Tom, Alan, and Bill. They're excellent teachers. So I certainly would greatly appreciate it if online ringing continues. And of course, in-person ringing as well. So if we could continue some sort of AGM or get together online, that would be great. But using the Able or a ringing room, it's been great for me.
Great, thanks. Let's see, Greg, I have you next.
Hi, so I'm concerned in terms of ringing both the short term and the long term. The short term, I think ringing room was a wonderful tool during the pandemic. Hopefully it will continue and we're getting back to in-person, but I also have this concern for 5, 10, and 15 years from now, that the ringers are getting older, different people have different activities. And one of my questions is also, how do we leverage to make sure we have enough ringers for the future?
When you say leverage,
Leverage the tools to either get people to learn, get people involved. I ring in Washington, D.C. And still often when we are ringing for different events, I find myself below median years of experience. And since Tom was one of the teachers when I learned in college, which was several decades ago, that's a concern. And even when ringing in Washington for different events, when you sort of look around and you realize when you're ringing on 8 bells and 6 of the other people would have been there 15 or 20 years ago, what will happen 15 or 20 years from now? Do we have a pipeline of people coming in who will be taking up ringing and being able to ring for events? So I think we have both a short term getting back after the pandemic, but just longer, what do we need to do for things?
Excellent, yeah. Eileen and our Bruce, you're next on the list. Thoughts about what's going to happen, wishes, expectations, where you're at right now?
Well, we have a lot. I mean, I have a lot of comments. The Philadelphia Guild never really got much satisfaction out of hitting a key on a keyboard with ringing room. We tried it several times and we didn't get very far. So we wound up just having Zoom meetings throughout the pandemic and socialized that way. I do think it is a very good tool for people that are at a distance from local towers, and they could ring to their heart's content, all different kinds of methods. I see David has rung things I've never even heard of, and he's rung a lot of quarter peals. So I think it has a place there, but like I said, we didn't get much satisfaction out of it. My concern is right now, we have some young people that want to learn to ring that have been up to the tower from, like there was a choir camp and there was a Bible study camp at St. Martin's, but they haven't had vaccinations. Wouldn't make sense to start trying to train them now. So we don't know when that would take place, but those are the kinds of kids you need to get that have had shown some interest, curiosity to get a new, group of ringers like Greg was talking about for the future. Of course, you look on the screen now, we see Abby. She's one of the young ringers that is, doing well. and is going to continue with it. We have in Philadelphia now, a dean came from Boston and he's real keen. So I think there is some people in the pipeline, but I think we need to do some recruitment and retention.
Always.
Yeah,
All right, yeah, that's, where Bruce, did you, I mean, and this is, we'll get into things more deeply in a bit, I hope, but Bruce, did you want to add any brief comments?
I was just going to say, and it's not just a North American problem. I mean, through my central council work, I've been involved quite a lot with PR and what have you, and it's a very big concern in the UK, and indeed even in Australia and New Zealand. A lot of people are not coming back as a result of the pandemic. The other big concern, particularly in the UK, is a lot of the parish churches could well see closures. And that's not only because of dwindling parishes, but also a lack of money and a lack of priests or vicars or whatever to keep them going. And so what's going to happen to those bells is another huge problem.
Donna, hello, you're next on my screen.
Hi there. I'm in Quebec City, and we've been ringing online since the last AGM. And Eileen, people were sort of brought kicking and screaming into there. I think it took us 3 weeks before we could even do plain hunt. But now we're back to doing Stedmans and touches of Granser. So, you know, there is a learning curve that happens there. We've only been back in the tower for about a month. And Linda, it's interesting to see that one fellow who hadn't rung a bell except online for, you know, the whole time of the pandemic, he started right out with Stedman. So it is, in some cases, I think most cases, it's transferable, which is really good. We're a little bit nervous about recruiting. We have one new learner right now. And, you know, it's that face-to-face part that we're a little bit nervous about. Since she had started bell handling before, we decided to keep her. And she's doing well, but she does a lot more online. At the moment, we have an online practice every week and an in-person practice every week. One thing we've talked about, but nobody's really keen at the moment because we're in the midst of a fourth wave here in Canada. But one thing we've talked about is a number of the high school programs here in Canada, the kids have to spend 20 hours learning a new skill. So that would be a perfect audience. And that's something we're just talking about now. But people are not too keen to sign on as teachers at the moment. But I hope the online will continue because it's been wonderful for us.
Thanks.
Would the teachers have to be from Canada? I mean, you could recruit teachers anywhere in the country, in the planet, really.
Well, I'm talking about in tower though.
Ah,
It's true, we could get the high school kids online. You know, and I guess that could be part of their English program because remember, most people here speak French. So, but a lot of kids are learning English. So yeah, that's a possibility online, but eventually they'd need to be back in the tower and we're not quite sure when that would happen.
Is that 20 hours thing particular to Quebec, or is that universal across?
I think it's in Ontario too. I'm from British Columbia and I haven't heard of it there, but it's something that you hear in a number of the high school programs. And it seems to me that would be wonderful as an audience, you know, an age group. Oh, one last thing, as a way of not teaching old people, we decided to contact people who had rung in the past and sort of lapsed. And we have a 30-year-old who's come back. He remembers how to ring a bell, ring up, ring down, but he doesn't have a clue about plain hunt. So anyway, at least we don't have to go through the stage of showing him how to handle a bell. But and on our last practice, we had 9 people out, which was a first in many, many years, I think.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, going back to your school kids and the 20-hour program, the other thing that the council's been developing in combination with art and some other programs that are going on over there, like the Duke of Edinburgh's Award and the Boy Scouts, Girl Guides and so forth. There is now a curriculum being developed. So if you go onto the Central Council website, I haven't looked at it myself, but it should be available, and you might want to pick some lesson plans, et cetera,
Interesting.
out of
Yeah,
that.
there's the Duke of Edinburgh is not that popular here, but there's a similar program with what's his name, Montaigne, I think, which is basically similar things where they have a number of milestones. That's great, Bruce. Thanks. I'll check it out.
And there's a new Young Ringers group that's just been formed as well. And they actually, as we speak today, the youth
That was last week.
um,
Young Changemakers Association.
no, the youth
The Ringing World
Ringing
Contest, that
World-
was last week.
was it?
Yeah.
I thought it was today.
It was
Well, you
last
couldn't
week.
join. Well, whatever. But
It was 9/11.
basically, it was the all the Young Ringers Association members and associations that have young men ringing groups all got together
Had a contest.
in Worcester last week and had a competition, and it was all announced there. So
And was that in person or online, Bruce?
that was in person. So I know ringers from Kent, Sussex, went, Worcester, obviously. There was about 14 or
22 groups, I think.
All
They
right.
don't
15 to
volunteer.
20 groups. know.
Donna, anything else you'd like to mention? Oh, I see. Donna, or is there anything else you wanted to mention?
No, that's what I had to say.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, Sarah, you're next on my screen.
Hi, I'm Sarah Bittner. I'm sort of in a transition stage between Houston and Philadelphia and spending time in both places. When the tower shut down in Houston, we did Ringing Room and used it, and I'm not a huge fan. I would meet up, only a couple of the people in the tower were really very into it. And I think Sundays we sort of kept up our handheld group, but it took weeks just to like be able to do stuff that we could easily do in hand. And then at a Wednesday evenings, people just mostly chatted. Like there was a little bit of time for reading, but it wasn't super popular. And the church started up these outdoor services fairly early on, and we would ring handbells for the outdoor services. So obviously we weren't bringing in Ringing Room on Sunday anymore. And I haven't signed up for any of the Ringing Room sessions for the AGM. I'm just not really into it. And for me, ringing is the whole experience. It's ringing the bell, it's the mental, it's the whole gestalt. And now that I can ring in person, I just don't have a lot of interest to do it online. But I can see how it would be good for like people that don't have access to a tower. And with this new, what is it, Wheatley, you can learn a method on your own. That's probably great for learning stuff. But I mostly actually got on this call to listen to people. So that's it for me.
Excellent, thanks.
I want to add to that, what she's saying. I think that online ringing is a great teaching tool, but I don't find it satisfactory to attempt court appeal because there's another ringer, and that is the internet.
Yeah.
There's
And it goes wrong too often, right?
yes, and I just don't find it very satisfying at all to do court appeals or appeals. I just find that online ringing is useful for teaching tool and learning methods.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. All right. Thanks. Rob, you're next on my list.
Hi, so sorry I missed the very beginning. I guess this is just tell you what's on top of our heads?
Yeah, that's right. The hope is that you'll give us a little background of who you are. Well, but mostly, what's been going on, what you're hoping, and then it'll give
Sure.
us some ideas of what we will want to do.
So, yeah, I've got 1 foot in a couple of different ringing camps, but I guess let me speak in my role as a tower captain for a small tower. That's the one in Alexandria. So, I've thought that all the online ringing developments have been fantastic, a lot of innovation, and I really applaud those who have made the most of it. I've chosen not to organize a separate practice for my tower because I've felt that there have already been enough other practices around. If that's the wrong decision, people can tell me that you'd love to have a practice in Alexandria and I'd consider it. But anyway, my focus really is on trying to get back to the tower because the aspect of ringing that is service to the church or service to the owner of the bells is really important to me. And so we haven't started up practice yet because we haven't agreed the terms with the seminary yet. But we do get asked to ring for occasional services, and I find that the online training is as good as it is, just isn't sufficient practice for people, especially less experienced ringers, to come in and ring a tower bell. We need to have practice on ropes in order to have a band that's sufficient to ring for services. So I need to figure out how to get back into a tower, which, by the way, has no windows that can be opened. So there's no ventilation. It's small, so it's hard to figure out how to get 8 people in there at this time. So, struggling with various things, but I think for me, the future is it's essential to have the rope time. And so we got to, from my point of view, we have to figure out how to get that, especially for our less experienced ringers. Some places are blessed by having ringers that can come in and just ring without having practiced, but most towers don't have that.
It's pretty rare. Yeah.
So actually, Tom, this is probably a side topic, but I've read a little bit about what's been going on with the Dumbbell Society and some of the innovations there. I actually have a vision that I would love to connect my simulator via Able and the internet to other towers and be able to try actual bell ringing distributed. I haven't had the time to investigate that yet. I think there's a real future there.
We must talk. Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. Okay, good. I'll be in touch somehow. Let's talk about that a bunch. Let's see, Charlie, I see you next.
Yeah, I got here late, so I'm not sure what the question is.
I'm sorry. Yeah, so it's just a brief idea of what's going on with you, or why you're here, kind of. What you want to learn, what's going on in your neck of the woods, and what you hope it's going to happen. Briefly, and then we'll talk more in depth.
Yeah, I don't know if Mary's had a chance to talk before this, so you'll probably hear the same thing from me that you did from her if she has.
Mary has not yet. So.
Okay.
So you can steal the thunder.
We've been having regular practice on ringing room since, April of 2020, twice a week for about an hour and a half each time. And we've been able to keep that together pretty consistently. We have had some issues with internet because people are scattered over basically mostly the northwest side of Atlanta, and some people have better connections than others, and that's been a certain amount of restriction. But overall, I'd say ringing room has been a big help to us, and like somebody else said earlier, I think we need to give a attaboy to the folks who have come up with these tools that in a remarkably short period of time that enable people to keep going with this stuff, because it's been very valuable for us. Otherwise, it's been 18 months pretty much since we've had any practices. There's a little bit of ringing that's happening now, but even that's been curtailed somewhat with the late surge that started in early July. And Georgia's in a fairly heavily impacted state with the current COVID surge. So we attempted a bit of service ringing. We were only allowed to ring 4 bells because of the distancing requirements. It certainly didn't leave a lot of room for creative ringing, but a little bit, but the church has generally not been available. The tower has not been available for practices. So we haven't really gotten too much exposure to ringing lately in person-to-person mode. It looks like there were plans for reopening in the fall at the church and across the whole diocese, but a lot of them have been shelved in the respect to the sort of Delta surge. So everything is kind of in limbo right now. The timing of the pandemic was unfortunate in that we had the most learners in our tower that we'd had in some time. We had like 5 people learning at the same time. And those folks, a couple that were learning, younger folks, we've seen some sporadic attendance from them, but the others have basically put it on hold for a while because of difficulties with internet access and other life events have prevented them from going in. So it kind of interrupted what was looking like a fairly fertile recruiting period for us. So that was really unfortunate.
Yeah.
But so far we're just kind of hanging in there with the ringing room, and that's been going reasonably well. We found it hard to do extended ringing very much on the ringing room because we have internet issues that come up periodically. They're not consistent. We'll get clogging of the pipes sort of, and then you go along for a while and then things will fall apart because some people will notice it if they get a whole bunch of bells ringing almost on top of one another that the other people don't see because of an individual congestion in the network near where they live. So that's been difficult. We haven't had many quarter peal attempts or things like that recently. So it's mostly just been short touches, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So if you just join, let me just say what we're doing right now. Trying to keep it brief, but it's going to take up we're half an hour through. But I'd just like to hear from everybody why they're here or what their current status is of online and/or in-person ringing. So Abby, you're next on my list. Good evening.
Hello. So I'm Abby. I moved to Cambridge like 3 days ago. So I've been doing some in-person ringing as long as I've been here, which is not long. But I really like ringing room, so I've continued to do that even though I'm around towers again. I think it's a lot of fun just to ring with people from all different places that I wouldn't normally get to see. Also, like over the course of the pandemic, I got much better at handbell ringing on ringing room. So I think it was a great tool for learning things. I wish it had been around when I'd started, because living further away from a tower, I couldn't really get to practice as much as I wanted. So yeah, that's my thoughts.
So thank you very much. Mary, I see you're next. Yeah, Mary Platt.
Oh, well, I don't have much to add to what Charlie was saying. We really have been, the core of the band has been very, very loyal to our 2 practices a week, and that's, you know, that's a lot. It's been important, but progress is very slow, and it did take us weeks, if not months, to master the basic techniques of staying in sync with the online ringing, just to stay in sync with the ringing itself. But we mastered that, and we do practice some advanced methods occasionally, and that's very satisfying. But we still cannot get into the tower, and that's a really big disappointment. You know, it just has to happen soon. We can't go on like this. We just have to get back to the tower.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say.
Oh, perfect. Thank you very much. Teresa, what can you tell us?
Well, for me, ringing room has been a godsend because, I mean, I've got health issues that limit my ability to ring in the tower these days. Plus, I don't have easy transportation, and I don't live close enough to the tower to do anything. So for me, ringing room is almost the only connection I have. And, you know, originally we had practices on Tuesdays to try and keep up the association of Tuesday night with practices. And when the tower reopened, we moved the ringing room practice to Monday and kept it going for people like me who just can't get into the tower but want to stay involved in ringing. So, I mean, for me, it's great. I do miss being actually in the tower and the physical activity of ringing the bells, but, you know, I can't do that anymore, and not as well as I would like to. And it's sometimes it's a hazard. So, you know, it just sort of, I'm glad it's there. It's my only ringing, well, Zoom and ringing room are my only connections.
Right.
Plus it's fun.
Yeah, well, that's okay, good. Yeah, we'll talk a bit more about the fun that we think. John, what can you tell us? Oh, I do see you're muted, right? So
how's that? Better?
perfect. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you've heard from Miriam already, but we might,
Yes.
sort of like others from the same tower. I think the great satisfaction of ringing room is being able to get people together, obviously, and we had a lot of fun with ringing with additional people. So instead of just our little band in Raleigh, we had guests from Washington and Boston and Portland and Orlando, you know, and so it enabled us to do all kinds of stuff we wouldn't have been able to do if it was just us. It also, I mean, we had the typical difficulties everybody did with bandwidth issues. We didn't have a whole lot of problems with echoing. We had a few, you know, hiccups with that, but it was mostly bandwidth issues that we found that when we switched from using Zoom to using Discord, a lot of that went away. And then my other comment about it would be that, two more comments. We were able to do things on ringing room that we can't do in the tower. So we were able to experiment with new methods. We had a good time working on things that, you know, you could just concentrate on the blue line and not worry about handling a bell. And I think it enabled a lot of people to learn blue lines for things that we would have taken much longer to learn if we were trying to do it in the tower. But when we went back to the tower, and we've been in the tower since Easter, everyone has been fully vaccinated. We have a lot of you familiar with our tower. We have a small tower at ground level. And we could open a window and put a fan in the doorway, and the air in there turned over every few seconds, I think. So we didn't really have an issue with concern about infection or anything. Everyone was masked, and we had the air moving through the tower. It was almost like ringing outdoors. But we couldn't handle the bells. It had been 15 months since anybody had pulled a rope, and we couldn't ring rounds when we first started, could we, Miriam? I mean, we had a hard time ringing Plain Hunt in the first couple of weeks. I think everybody's sort of gotten back to where they were on handling, but we have discovered that the method lines that we learned, we're still not able to just jump in and ring those on tower bells. It's interesting that, you know, the whatever you say, whatever the word is about, you know, the cognition of the line, you know, trying to interface that or match that up with the coordination, the hand-eye coordination, handling the bell is it's actually been quite a challenge. So we're really, I guess I'd say, pretty much in the same place we were when the pandemic started, rather than coming in with, you know, with 3 or 4 new methods in hand that we know what the blue line looks like. That's Miriam. Do you? I'm sorry, I don't want to be the moderator, but it'd be interesting to know if Miriam thinks that I've.
I agree with everything you've said. I don't have anything to add to that.
Great, thanks. Philip, you are the next on my screen. And you may have, oh, there, good.
Well, I haven't, I tried to ring with mask and found that I just couldn't manage that. I was too much lack of oxygen. So I'm trying to ring with a simulator. That's why I've been trying that during this session.
All right, good. Yeah, so this is the first time you've experimented with ringing room and things like that. Just yesterday and today, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well, let's see. Let me tell you a bit about what I've been up to, I guess. So I got going on online ringing. I actually did a little bit before ringing room because I scrambled together with some other folks in Chicago, and we got a very, very clunky online ringing program that was a real pain in the neck to set up, but it did work. And then ringing room appeared, and instantly we saw that was great. And I agree that it took a little bit to just get the feel for how to fit together with people, but you know, you have to stick with it a little bit. It seemed to come pretty well. And we've been having regular online practices, and I have absolutely loved it. For a number of reasons. One is I don't have a lot of ringers who live near me, and now all of a sudden I've got plenty, and we have, you know, people that join our practices from all over the place, and so we've got the horses to ring all kinds of things, and we've got people that are learning new stuff, and I've just been having a blast. So let's see. So what else? I have a dumbbell in my basement that I ring fairly regularly with some folks in England. We all have sensors on our dumbbells, and computers are all set up in ringing room, and that is possible to ring together like that. What else? And I have done a couple quarter pews. Done, yeah, be somewhere between 5 and 10 probably. And they are tricky, but they're doable as well. And it just takes some figuring out how to do that. I've done a couple of quarter peals on the dumbbell, and that's even trickier, but but again, possible. Yeah, so I'm a proponent of online ringing for sure. So if I can encourage anybody to give it a try or keep with it a little bit, I would encourage that. There was talk about, Rob, you mentioned about, the people could go to other practices if they wanted to, which is absolutely possible and encouraged. It also, though, ringing seems to be something that people want to do together and with their friends, right? And so having a local group seems to have some staying power. And so anyway, what else? We will definitely continue with our online practices, even once we're in the tower, for the couple of reasons I already mentioned. That got plenty of people to ring with in that case. I really like the people that have been coming to practices, and I just want to keep in contact with them as much as I can. And then there's the other thing is, for me, the bell tower is an hour away. If there's not much traffic, an hour and a half, 2 hours if there is. And on a Saturday, that's usually fine. There's not much traffic. So we'll keep the Saturday practice, but we have a Monday practice, which is a beast for traffic. And I'm going to ditch that one gladly and meet with people online. So we're in the tower. We've been in the tower for about a month for one practice a week. And that will continue. And we're hoping, recruiting is the tricky thing with, we have an open house set up, and I don't know if that's a foolish idea with pandemic wise. So that, there's a question of, introducing people to bells and trying to recruit and balancing whether we're being, unwise and dangerous and things like that. But so that's something we're trying to weigh a bit. So that's my bit. Let's see. I would like to, I invite anybody to volunteer something they'd like to focus on for the next 5 minutes or so. Or I can suggest.
Is there a centralized list anywhere of various towers practices so that we can make it easier to visit?
Maybe. There was a list that was available on the old website that I put together, and I will figure out how to get it on the new website.
But they're
So-
also on the new website under towers, it does list the nights that they practice. It's just figuring out whether they practice, if that's a in-person or tower.
I suspect that information is not terribly up to date on there. Do you know if that's the case or not? Yeah.
No, I don't know.
I mean, yeah, it probably has the in-person practice that may or may not be happening at the moment.
Mhm.
There was a,
I would think you're right, Tom. I think it's all the old
Yeah.
information
yeah,
that's migrated over.
yeah. I've been scrambling to find that list because it was exactly what you were talking about, Teresa. So I'll find a way to get that on the new site.
Good, thank you.
Because I certainly would like to see people join online practices because it's available and people would be delighted to have other people show up. So
This is John. It was my experience that if I dropped in on a practice, well, I really only ever went to Washington's, but they were always very cordial and
sure.
welcoming. But I suppose if we got it started to where people were going to practices all over the place, it might be nice to have some sort of protocol for getting in touch with the tower captain and letting them know, that you're planning on joining them.
Rochester is open to vaccinated ringers, and I note that the information on the new website is not up to date, but that's not the new website's fault. We'll try to get on that.
Yeah, I certainly.
Yeah, I just found the old list on the new website. I mean, I
Oh.
can show you where it is if you
Oh,
want me to share my screen.
that would be, well, or you could put a link in the chat or share your screen. That's great.
So here we go. Can you see it?
Yeah,
News.
I can.
I went to news, and then
Oh.
here's browse pre-2021 articles.
Ah,
And you go down here.
online
and
practice information.
Online practice information.
good.
And you go to the Google link, and there it is. So not easy to find, but it's still.
Yeah, I had it, so it stayed on the first page on the website.
Right.
So I'm going to see if I can make that happen again. Thank you very much.
Sure.
And it might be good to maybe update it. There might be some more updating.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm sure some of the towers that have now gone back to ringing in person probably may not
Exactly right.
have dropped out of ringing room and vice versa. And Chris, remember the website is only as good as the people feeding it.
Feed me.
Well, let's see. I'm not sure exactly what we can say about online practices beyond be in communication with the people that hold the keys for the tower, ventilate as best you can, vaccinate as best you can, mask, I guess, and hold tight. I don't know. Well, yeah, let's talk about online practice. I don't think there's a whole lot we can say, but I'd be happy to hear thoughts on that if anybody wanted to share.
Or can I just add back to some of what you were just saying about the in-person practices? One of our other big issues is the requirements of the different towers. Their primary institution, the cathedral, has instituted certain requirements for us. The Park Service has other requirements, things like that. It's just keeping track of that when in person.
Yeah, Tom, you mentioned local bands. I mean, I've recommended in the past that any of our Alexandria ringers who want to ring online should ring in the Washington Ring Society's practice. And partly because I agreed to let them use my practice night, which is Monday night, to have the WRS online.
Well,
So,
okay.
So once we get back in the tower, we're going to renegotiate that. But anyway, by the way, yeah, the Washington practice, I don't organize it, but it's available for those who want to visit.
Did anybody take you up on that? I got a follow-up question on that. So do you know if anybody took you up on that?
So I don't go to that practice, but I don't know. I think some people have gone occasional, but I'm not sure.
I don't
The
think
most
so.
frequent attendees are Linda, myself, Quilla, and Laura.
And Madeline.
Madeline, yeah. Occasionally Rick Dupuis shows up. A few other
I think
people
in the
pop in
early days,
occasionally.
I think in the early days, a couple of our other Alexandria ringers tried
Candace.
it.
Yeah, Candy did. Candy has Candy. And I think
Yeah, so there
Candy
you
is
go.
trying to go to the cathedral for training. Yeah.
Right. So Tom, the short answer is some people did take us up on it, but as you know, not everybody likes the online ringing experience.
Understood. Yeah. So my follow-up on that is, I mean, that makes sense. No, not everybody's going to do that, but some might. And the ones who are, somebody who's saying more ringing, yeah, show me where, and they'll go, and some people, they probably won't. But the thing I want to add is that, especially with online ringing, well, any ringing, I suppose, some sort of guidance, hand-holding is probably, will do some good. Or just, if somebody's expecting somebody to show up, the usual things. But the online ringing, you come in to a Zoom meeting where you don't know anybody. That's takes some guts, So.
Just also to give context for people in Washington about Washington ringing and switching to the online is Washington has been back in person since the late spring. So we are doing one in-person practice a week. We're doing Sunday service nearly every week. We're trying to do Old Post Office. We've been doing wedding ringing. So that also may be taking people away from the online, since people are able to get their ringing fix in otherwise.
Absolutely, right. Yeah. The other thing, Rob, and anybody really, you know, there's, you know, like we said, there's a number of practices around. So, you know, a different time might work better for somebody, or, you know, and not everybody's going to want it, but I'm of the opinion that if we can get more people ringing online, that's really good, because I'm skewed that way. So. All right. Let's see. Any other in-person thoughts?
Have people found it useful to get things like CO2 sensors in their ringing rooms to measure the air quality, or is that something that no one's bothered to try? As I said, we have a case where with the tower with no windows, and so it's something I'm concerned about.
We did that. I should say Ed Futcher did it. He got a USB sensor, put it in his laptop. You get a graphic readout, and based on what we saw, we determined that we could ring for 15 minutes and then take a 4-minute break outside the door, and then come back in, and the level would be as low as it was when we started.
Is that without the fan?
That was actually with the fan. But we've actually gone way beyond that now, because it's just too daggum hot in Raleigh. So we leave the air conditioner on, and we wear our masks, and everybody trusts that anyone who's got any issues isn't going to be there. Like I just traveled and got a negative test before going to practice.
Houston has air conditioning, and there's a window that I don't think opens. And when the Delta started surging, the church went from having vaccinated unmasked service to recommending that people mask. And that same week, a couple of people came to practice without masks. We had a little bit of discussion at the beginning of the practice, and everybody masked up. And then the following Monday, we found out that somebody had a breakthrough case in that group, and their whole family had it. And none of the rest of us caught it, which was, I think, a really good sign that the masking was working, or maybe the vaccines were working. But I like the rigging, and I guess I just rely on the vaccine. And we do have one person who's been kind of cautious about, in Houston, who's been kind of cautious about coming back, because he has a friend who had a breakthrough case and was very, very, very sick. So I think and another person who's not back at the tower yet has gone back to just doing stuff not in person. So it seems very, individualistic. And then there's going to be a social event, an outdoor social event at the beginning of October. And then I go to Philadelphia, and I ring with people in Philadelphia, and that's unmasked, and I don't really care. That's fine. And the case counts are so much lower in Philadelphia than they are in Houston. Like, Houston's in really bad shape. It's scary. I don't want to have a heart attack because there's no room in the hospital. Those are my thoughts about in-person rigging.
Excellent, thank you.
But Rob, if you go on, there was a series of articles about CO2 monitors and testing and so forth in the ringing world and on the Central Council website. So if you're interested in researching it, there's some info on there.
Thanks, Bruce. Yeah, I think I saw that, but I'm curious to know who'd tried it, who hadn't. Thank you.
Quilla had done it in Washington, I think, borrowing Eddie Futcher's device. And so she has the numbers for Washington.
Okay.
Well, I'd like to hear some more stuff about online ringing, if anybody, any, I don't know, let's see, anybody who hasn't done it, who is curious, anybody who's done it some,